The crowd murmured as Ibrahim Traoré approached the entrance, his stride confident but calm. But the security guard stood firm, blocking his path. "Sorry, sir," he said, his voice rigid with authority. "You can't enter." Ibrahim paused, his eyes narrowing. A crowd began to gather. The tension in the air thickened as if everyone sensed something monumental was about to unfold. It was a warm, late afternoon in the heart of the city, the sky painted with hues of orange and pink, as the event venue buzzed with anticipation. The grand hall tucked away behind tall iron gates was buzzing with reporters, officials and dignitaries, all gathered for an evening to celebrate what was supposed to be a historic occasion. Ibrahim Traoré, the towering figure who had earned the admiration of millions, stood before the gates, dressed in a simple black suit, his presence commanding yet unassuming. The streets surrounding the venue were filled with the hum of voices, the distant sound of car engines, and the crisp rustling of newspapers being unfolded in the hands of those waiting outside. The scent of fresh pastries and coffee from nearby vendors mixed with the warm breeze, offering a hint of normalcy in the face of an extraordinary moment. Despite the outward calm, Ibrahim carried with him an invisible weight, a series of betrayals, disappointments, and unresolved struggles that had shaped him into the man he was today. His journey had been one of defiance, resilience, and leadership, yet there was a depth of vulnerability in his eyes that only a few could perceive. As he stood in front of the entrance, the imposing figure of the security guard, an older man in his mid-50s, clad in a neat black uniform, blocked his way without hesitation. His body language was rigid, his posture alert, as though Ibrahim's mere presence had disrupted the delicate order of the evening. The scene felt surreal. Ibrahim, the man who had once been rejected, mistreated, and underestimated by the world, now found himself faced with a situation that mirrored the struggles of his past. But something inside him stirred. A spark ignited, and he could feel the eyes of the crowd watching, waiting for what would come next. The security guard's expression was stern, his eyes scanning Ibrahim as though he were an intruder. His words were simple, but firm. "You can't enter." Ibrahim's brow furrowed, the sting of injustice cutting through him like a blade. He had been invited to this event, this was his event, yet here he stood, denied entry by someone who didn't recognize him. The paradox was too much to ignore. "You don't know who I am?" Ibrahim asked, his voice steady but laced with a quiet anger. The crowd behind him held their breath, sensing the impending confrontation. The guard shook his head, his grip tightening on the clipboard in his hand. "I'm sorry, sir. You'll have to leave." For a moment, the world seemed to freeze. Ibrahim stood still, a man caught between his past and his present. He could have stormed past the guard, forced his way in, but he didn't. Something held him back. Perhaps it was the knowledge that this wasn't just about getting through a door, it was about something much deeper, something more profound. This moment had significance. It was a test. He took a deep breath, his mind racing through his past struggles. He thought of all the times he'd been underestimated, told he wasn't enough, or denied his place in the world. It had always been a fight to prove his worth. But this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the legacy of all the people who had ever been told no, who had ever been pushed aside, silenced, or overlooked. As the crowd began to murmur, one person stepped forward, a young woman in her late 20s, dressed in a sleek business suit. She approached the security guard, her steps brisk but confident. She was one of the event organizers, and she recognized Ibrahim immediately. Her voice was firm as she addressed the guard. "This man is Ibrahim Traoré. He is the guest of honor tonight. You'll let him through." The security guard froze, his face flushing with embarrassment. He had failed to recognize the man who had become a symbol of resilience and transformation across the country. As the young woman spoke, the guard's mind raced, trying to understand what had just transpired. But before he could respond, Ibrahim took a step forward, his expression calm. "It's all right," he said quietly. "Let's not make this more difficult than it needs to be." His eyes met the guards, and for a fleeting moment, there was a connection. Ibrahim saw the exhaustion in the man's face, the quiet shame behind his rigid exterior. The guard had been doing his job, following orders, but in that moment Ibrahim understood. This wasn't a battle for entry. It was a battle for recognition, for being seen. The security guard hesitated, then slowly stepped aside, allowing Ibrahim to pass. A ripple of applause echoed from the crowd behind him, but Ibrahim didn't turn around. He simply walked past the gate, the soft thud of his shoes on the pavement marking a new chapter in his journey. Inside the venue, the atmosphere shifted. The once tense air of the gathering now seemed to lighten, as though the crowd sensed a change in the energy. Ibrahim Traoré had entered not just as a leader but as a man who had faced countless obstacles and still stood tall. The event began, but Ibrahim's speech was unlike anything anyone had expected. His words were simple yet profound. "I stand before you today," he said, his voice unwavering, "not because I have been granted something that was rightfully mine, but because I've fought for every inch of it." There was a moment of silence in the room, a pregnant pause before a wave of applause filled the hall. The applause wasn't just for his words. It was for the man himself, for the humanity he embodied, for the resilience that had shaped him, and for the way he had turned a moment of personal denial into a symbol of redemption. "I was told no," he continued. "I've been told no by people who didn't believe in me, by systems that wanted me to fail. But I'm here to tell you all, there is no no that can keep you down if you stand your ground. You are not broken. You are becoming." And in that moment, Ibrahim Traoré wasn't just a man walking into a room. He was a beacon of hope for anyone who had ever been told they were not enough. The crowd roared, their applause deafening as Ibrahim stood tall, a symbol of perseverance and redemption. The evening drew to a close and the crowd began to disperse. People spoke in hushed tones about the event, about Ibrahim's speech, and about the security guard who had stood in his way. But Ibrahim remained where he stood, quietly reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. The guard had been a mere obstacle, but the lesson he had given him would stay with him forever. It was a reminder that sometimes the most profound moments come not from grand gestures, but from the smallest acts of recognition. As the sun dipped, below the horizon the night air grew cooler and Ibrahim walked out into the street, the weight of the world no longer on his shoulders. He had earned his place not just in that room but in his own life, and as he looked up at the stars above, he whispered to himself, "I'm not broken. I'm becoming." If this story touched your heart, consider subscribing for more inspiring tales of hope, healing, and unexpected kindness. Hit the like button and share this with someone who needs it today. Let's keep spreading the message of resilience and redemption, one story at a time.